Hello again. My name is Roger Thompson. I'm an education lead as part of the Violence Reduction Partnership, and welcome you to this section. So you've obviously chosen the right one. You've chosen the education one, so 10 out of 10 for your choice. And it's wonderful to see in the audience Mr. Mark Wiggins, who started our start-up for the Violence Reduction Partnership. And along with Mark, I was also there at the start and still here towards the end, as we've got another 12 months funding, which is wonderful news. And of course, the theme for this particular conference is about driving change. And that's absolutely what we've aimed to do throughout the years of the Violence Reduction Partnership. It was a privilege for me working within education to come and actually have some opportunities for blue sky thinking and to be doing and spending time working out what might be helpful for each of our 5 local authorities in helping support them in their vision in relation to reducing serious violence. And absolutely about education. Goodness me, when you talk about education, there are so many potential ways in which we can be influencing and supporting our communities as we consider a reduction in serious violence that it's almost frightening. You need to compartmentalise. And through the years, there have been different things and quite a number of activities that we've been considering and we've been funding. Some have been less successful, but that was part of the process for all of us. That wasn't about the people or the organisations that they were serving. It was more about trialling and testing, which is why at the start of this conference, having violence reduction, having John Moore's input, gives that example of how we've been very keen throughout the process to be evaluating and considering which of these projects, which of these initiatives have been successful. And along the way, we've also been providing guidance as well. So it's not just been about activities, it has been about guidance. Delivering violence reduction learning in schools was a programme that we provided, which is available on the website, along with a host of others. Considering how we'd reduce exclusion, not that we have the answer, but putting that element in relation to serious violence and the importance of those that were excluded from our education settings and the massive impact that has on them was also an important part of the work that we were doing. So what we're trying to do with myself and my colleague Marie from Fire and Rescue for this particular section is to give you a smorgasbord of just 2 or 3, it's actually 3 examples of initiatives and programmes that we funded and we continue to fund, which we believe have an impact. The third one may be more targeted. The first 2 are absolutely universal. So it's our view of providing support to schools, primary and at secondary settings where there's a universal offer that looks at serious violence. And you know, that is no easy ask again. The national curriculum doesn't actually have a section on reducing serious violence. So for us to be able to pigeonhole, fit in the work that we believe is important has been difficult, but absolutely compelling and worthwhile when we've seen the outcomes that we have. Again, thanks to John Moore's and their evaluation. So we're going to have an example from Fire and Rescue later on. We're going to have an example of a secondary school provision in a few moments. But to begin with, we're going to look at primary schools and a universal programme that we've been supporting from Ariel Trust. So I would like to introduce Paul Ainsworth, who's going to describe that for the next few minutes. Round of applause for Paul. I'm hoping that's going to work, Paul, for you.
Thanks, Roger.
Okay.
Hi, as Roger said, my name is Paul Ainsworth. I'm the director of a small organisation called Ariel Trust, and we've been funded by the Violence Reduction Partnership to work with 150 primary schools per year. I've got to say, I'm really nervous. I can feel myself shaking here. I don't usually stand in formal situations like this, so thank you. And I really don't know. Okay, so it says on there, I'm going to talk about mobilising the existing workforce to reduce violent crime. So let me begin by talking a little bit about the workforce that exists in primary schools. There are around 400 primary schools on Merseyside. There are about 1,000 trained and qualified staff working with each year group. That means in Key Stage 2, there are about 4,000 motivated, qualified staff whose salaries are already paid and they are already working face-to-face with around 100,000 young people per year in Key Stage 2. That's already funded. Whatever happens to the Violence Reduction Partnership next year, that's a funded resource that exists in this city region. What I want to talk about is how we mobilise that workforce to tackle violence that exists within our communities. So what I'm going to try and do is share with you some of the learning that we've experienced during the time that we've been funded by the Violence Reduction Partnership. Okay, slow down, Paul, calm down, it'll be fine. Okay, all good presentations start with defining the problem. Let me talk about the problem from a teacher's point of view. What I've spent the last 4 years doing, as I've said, working with more than 150 schools a year, listening to teachers, asking them to tackle violent crime within the curriculum, such as it is. And what they do is the first thing they do when I say, this is a good idea, let's try this approach in your school, the first thing they do is complain. You won't be surprised to hear. Teachers are already under pressure. They're already working within a pressurised environment. They have lots of targets to hit. I say, let's hit some more targets. Let's deliver more outcomes. They say, but we've got limited resources. They say that around violent crime, that they're asked to respond to new issues on a regular basis. They describe it as feeling like a game of whack-a-mole. You know, that fairground game where a mole pops up and you have to hit it on the head. One month, that has to respond to knife crime. The next month, that has to respond, there are some statistics around gun crime. Then that has to respond to gun crime. Then that has to respond to sexual violence. And last summer, loads of teachers, particularly in North Sefton, were being asked to respond to politically motivated violence that was taking part in their communities. And what we're asking our primary schools to do is respond to lots of data that we are collecting. I was listening to Sarah talking about the data. The data is coming in on a continuous basis, and we're asking primary school teachers to be responsive to changing needs. That's not a very effective way of working. If you just look at that from a primary schools teacher's point of view, you just get the hang of a new intervention around violent crime. You get the nuances of that, you understand the objectives of that, you've had to go at delivering that, and then you're asked to move on to a new subject, you're asked to move on to gun crime or drug-related crime or sexual violence. If we keep asking our primary schools to respond to a changing agenda, we're going to end up with ineffective service delivery. It's not an effective way of asking schools to plan their workload and intervene around violence. So that's the problem. What I would like to do is make a set of recommendations about what a strategic approach to mobilising our primary schools might look like. And that feels like a really scary thing to do in front of you guys. I don't know why I set out to do that, but let's give it a go. So what we're going to talk about next. Let's talk about what a strategic approach might look like. First of all, if we have a strategic approach to mobilising our schools, we can have an empowered workforce. That, like I said, that in each year group in the city region, there are 1,000 qualified professional colleagues who are already funded to deliver a qualitative service to young people. If we work with them in a strategic way, rather than asking them to be responsive all the time, if we set them strategic targets and allow them time to plan and learn and develop an infrastructure around themselves, we can empower that workforce. We can have an empowered workforce in this city region. What that will lead to is sustainable delivery. I've already heard, I just went to the gents before I came to this session, and in the gents, the conversation, VRP's got money for next year. We're in an environment where funding is scarce. We know that there's funding in place for next year, but we don't know what the medium or even long-term outlook looks like. If we empower the workforce that already exists in our primary schools, we can have sustainable delivery. If we share evidence-based practice with teachers this year, and they can see it working, they will repeat that next year and the year after. We can develop a sustainable model of delivery that's not dependent on short-term changes in the political environment and funding. That workforce is working with tens of thousands of young people a year. In Key Stage 1, it's probably 100,000 young people across the city region. If we can have a workforce of 4,000 teachers working with 10,000 young people, 100,000 young people a year, delivering an evidence-based practice, that can make a dramatic impact on the culture of this city. I'm going to repeat that, and I'm going to make a very grand claim in a moment. A workforce of more than 4,000 young people already funded out of education budgets, working with up to 100,000 young people a year, can have a dramatic impact on the culture of this city region. They can deliver a culture change. This is where I get really nervous, because I'm going to make a claim and I'm going to try and justify that claim. In this city, there is a culture, in our communities, there is a culture that is designed to keep children quiet. If a child puts their hands up and wants to say to an adult, but I'm being subject to violent behaviour from somebody else, what happens in our communities is people point at that child and say, you're a grass, you're a rat. In our communities, there exists a culture that supports violent crime and is designed to silence children. I'm going to stand here today and I'm going to say that's changeable. That culture has existed the whole of my life. And I'm an old fella. That culture has existed in our communities for decades. But we don't have to accept that. That is changeable. And in our school, we have a qualified and professional workforce of thousands of young teachers who are working with hundreds of thousands of young people every day. If we mobilise that workforce in a strategic way, we can begin to change that culture. Those teachers are dying to work with children and train them how to ask for help in positive and constructive ways. Those teachers are keen to train young people on positive bystander intervention. Those teachers want to teach children a language that they can use to talk about patterns of abusive behaviour. And they want to do work that's about changing the way children and adults communicate, including adults in the police force. So I'm making a bold claim. I can feel my heart, as I've stood in front of some of you people, I can feel, as I'm saying, that is changeable. I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. So let me try and justify the claim that I've just made. Okay, so the work that we've been doing in primary schools has been independently evaluated by John Moores University. The only reason I've got the bottle to stand up here and make a claim like that in front of you is because there is some evidence to back it up. So let me go through some of the evidence. So you can see in the bar chart on the right-hand side, John Moores asked children before our intervention, after our intervention, if they understood what grooming means and could they explain that to a friend. Pre-intervention, only 25% of children agreed with that. Post-intervention, that figure rose to 81%. That's a clear, statistically significant, measurable change. Children learning a language to talk about the process of grooming so they can share that with their friends and talk about that amongst their peer group. You can see that John Moores found that we were working with more than 163 primary schools delivering these interventions in more than 150 primary schools per year. That's a really significant finding because it shows the schools are enthusiastic. We haven't had lots of schools signing up because I'm great. We've had lots of schools signing up because they need support with these issues. If we design resources around their needs, they're enthusiastic to respond to that. John Moores also measured positive changes associated with help-seeking behaviour. What we've been doing in these schools is teaching children that you're not if you're subject to violent behaviour or abusive behaviour in your community and you want to ask for help for an adult, that makes you a grass. Okay, I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm going to hurry up. They also found positive changes in relation to bystander intervention, children being more willing to intervene and help their friends if they're subject to oppressive or violent behaviour. And really importantly, we've observed visible changes in the way that children communicate with adults. We've had police officers in our classrooms. One of the issues we're trying to deal with is online child abuse. So we've had officers from the OCATE team. That's the team that delivers it's online child abuse investigation team. I haven't quite got that right, but near enough. We've had those officers in a classroom with children and parents, where those officers have been role-playing with children. What happens if they start sharing indecent images with one another? And we've seen children start to behave differently in role-play scenarios with those officers. The children have had a chance to put those officers' hat on and role-play what it's like being an officer. We've seen children begin communicating differently with police officers, because this is an evidence-based intervention. It's about changing the way children ask for help. Oh, wrong button. Okay, the key to this, right? The reason we've had more than 150 schools engage with us is we've delivered these interventions within the context of the national curriculum. We've focused on the sex and relationships education curriculum. In primary schools, it's called relationships education. The curriculum clearly says schools have a statutory responsibility to improve children's help-seeking behaviour. It clearly says that schools have a responsibility to develop skills associated with bystander intervention. It clearly says that schools have a responsibility to help children develop the vocabulary to talk about abusive behaviour in their community and help them become confident using that vocabulary. It clearly says that children should be able to communicate positively with responsible adults. Schools are required to deliver this. What we've done is engage more than a third of the primary schools in the region by focusing on their needs, by focusing on what it says in the curriculum. And so what I'm going to do is come on to my recommendations. I'm going to try and make sure I finish on time. What I want to recommend is that our violence reduction strategies focus on the needs of schools. If we want to mobilise our workforce, we need to focus on the needs of schools. These are a little bit out of date, but these are quotes from the Serious Violence Action Plans. One, it's a bit unfair to focus on Liverpool and Wirral, but these are the ones I know best. In the education section, what Liverpool Serious Violence Action Plan says, we will review our serious violence education resources and promote the latest evidence-based resources. What that is saying, we'll focus on what we supply to schools. What my recommendation is if we want to engage schools across our region, our strategy needs to start off by saying, we will review schools' needs. We'll look at what the curriculum already says and what schools are already required to deliver. And we'll build our interventions in response to the demand that exists within schools, not focus on what we already supply. So what I want to do is advocate a demand-led approach. We can engage schools across this city region by using a demand-led approach. I've got 1 minute. And I don't know which button to press. So what I would like to recommend is let's review our serious violence action plans. Let's write a demand-based approach into it. Let's work on mobilising the workforce that already exists in our schools. And let's have a strategic approach to changing the culture in this city. Every child has the right to ask for help. Let's equip our primary schools with tools that they can use to teach positive help-seeking behaviour, to teach positive skills associated with bystander intervention. And let's help change the relationship between children and adults so they're confident asking us for help. In particular, let's make sure children are equipped with skills that they can use to talk to police officers. Every child in this city should feel comfortable saying to a police officer, I'm in a situation and I need some help. We can get rid of that culture that tells children they're a grass if they want to speak to a police officer. I would like to change that. I've seen it enough. My email address is on the screen. I'm paul@aerialtrust.com. And if you would like to work with me, please get in touch. I'd love to work in partnership with you. Thank you.
Stay there, Paul. Paul? Thanks very much, Paul. Thank you. I think we've just about got time for one question. I'm just going to say that from our working with Ariel Trust, there are so many examples of age-appropriate work. They're doing very sensitive topic work with a young age range and do it so sensitively and carefully. You know, you just need to see it to appreciate it. We will just take one question, so there appears to be one there. Do you mind just using this so we can hear you?
Thank you very much. Matthew Ashton, Director of Public Health for Liverpool. Well done, Paul. That was excellent. Big fan of the work that Ariel Trust do. I guess my question is, what's your assessment of why schools don't or are unable to engage in this agenda, and what's our role in helping you and others like you connect with schools that find it harder to engage?
Okay, the advantages that Ariel Trust has is it's a really small independent voluntary sector organisation. It's really easy for me to step into the shoes of a teacher and see it from their point of view. I don't want to be too political, but the problem with the way large public sector organisations work is we have people in the police force who have very clear crime prevention targets. We have people in local authorities who have different sets of targets, and we have people working in schools who have different sets of targets. These are large organisations driven by high-level targets. I think what we need to do is step into the shoes of a classroom teacher and just see things from their point of view. And I know that's really hard for police officers. I do a lot of work with police officers. The way they communicate, the way they see the world is differently. But it's definitely possible. And when I work with police officers in the classroom, what I find is when I get them to take off their hat and chill out a bit, they love working with children and listening to children and responding in a way that our primary school teachers do every day. But it's just a role shift, seeing it from a different point of view.
Okay, can we hear it for Paul, please? Thanks, Paul. So that various topics, grassing or grooming, radicalisation, send me a selfie online, all those sorts of issues are featured through the various elements of training that Ariel Trust offer to be facilitating primary school teachers to be delivering. So as Paul's very clearly laid out there, it's about how we empower those that are actually already there with our young people to help develop their knowledge so that they have a confidence in spreading the message that we've got there about reducing serious violence. So for our second presentation, we're going to move again to a universal programme, but to our secondary schools. And whereas Paul and his team were doing that work with Ariel Trust before the Violence Reduction Partnership, certainly Merseyside Youth Association have been doing an awful lot before we were created, but no one was doing mentors in violence prevention. So there's a couple of people in this room that we went along to Glasgow a number of years back just to look at the work they were doing in mentors in violence prevention, MVP. And really what we created, we're very proud to say, is proving to be incredibly successful. Where others have possibly fallen through the country, then this programme grows from strength to strength, including the Youth Endowment Fund and being very interested in it. So we're especially proud that it's our homegrown product. So we've got Rhiann Barrett from Merseyside Youth Association, who's going to be just describing that to you. A warm welcome to Rhiann, please.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. I've never done a full conference like this before, so similar to Paul, feeling a bit nervous, but we've got this. So I'm here today to talk about the Mentors in Violence Prevention Programme, and it's one of my biggest passions is doing this project. It's like my baby. I absolutely love it. And it's something I do on a day-to-day basis. I've just been having conversations about how I was literally in a school yesterday doing this project. So hopefully I do it justice. So we're going to talk about potentially thinking about being an active bystander, and this has been covered already through a lot of the things spoken about today in terms of what Zara's mentioned and also what Paul's just mentioned about the Ariel Trust. So in terms of what MVP is, I am delighted to use our young people's voices to let you know a little bit about the project. We work very closely with our young people who engage in the project to use their voices to tell other people about it. So without me having to say it, we've got some of our young people who are going to. Hopefully. Oh, it's got no sound. Do I need to edit anything? Do I need to fix anything? I don't know. Might have to go back. Is...
That little screen, it might, and if it doesn't, I'm looking more so.
I'll let you deal with that. I'm good at IT, but maybe not that good.
No, that's blind. That's light.
There we go. Whoever done that, thank you very much.
Programs like Mentors and Violence Prevention.
And it basically teaches younger students, using older students, about how to handle situations that may be violent or upsetting.
It teaches them about violence and victim blaming.
The MVP programme is a group of students within our school that help mentor younger years against violence and teach them how to stay safe.
We teach younger kids about stuff like cyberbullying, online abuse.
Educating them on different kind of stuff like rumours, body shaming and how to deal with the problems.
To teach them about being active bystanders and preventing violence around the school so they can grow up to be better people.
Amazing. Thank you for fixing the tech. So overall, it's thinking about how it is a peer education programme. So a little bit different to Paul's work that he does in primary schools. We are empowering young people to teach other young people about these situations. We're very passionate about it being a peer education programme because we're well aware that as adults going into schools and talking to them about violence prevention, it's not relatable sometimes. I'm obviously a little bit older than some of those students. Sometimes I go in and act like a student, but we're here to do that. But doing it through that peer education role allows young people to, you know, develop the language and framework that is giving them the opportunity to challenge some of those things around the attitudes and beliefs and cultural norms that underpin violence, particularly youth violence. And it's thinking about how violence is gender-based as well and other forms of abuse, such as bullying. So although we're trying to, you know, implement some of these things to make it go a little bit wider into the community, we're trying to focus a lot on some of the things that happen within school. And it is obviously empowering our pupils to communicate those concerns within school if need be. Now, MVP is based on 5 core components, them being exploring violence through a gendered lens, developing our leadership skills, adopting a bystander approach and recognising the scope of violent behaviour, as well as challenging victim blaming. And there's a graphic on the screen there. I know as it gets a little bit to the top of the pyramid, you can't really see it, but we use this violence pyramid to talk about how where do we intervene as a bystander, and we think about the attitudes and beliefs that people have and where we can challenge those attitudes and beliefs rather than trying to challenge people when an act of abuse is occurring. Now, the programme in itself consists of the mentors being trained in these 5 core components. They are then trained to deliver sessions to younger students within their school around scenarios and group discussions, with the key concept is that they are trained to do that, so they're not left in the lurch at any point. But the student mentors, which are normally the older students within the school, normally in year 10, they lead their younger students into those discussions and they talk about realistic scenarios, things that happen in school, things that happen outside of school, and how they might witness those things as a bystander. And as we progress into those sessions, we start to look at, okay, if we're a bystander, how can we be an active bystander and stand up for what's right? And we think about the several actions that we can take as a bystander, and particularly those appropriate ones. Now, within our project, our schools will be on board and they commit to certain things when they sign up to our MVP programme. And that's because there's a need for the ethos and principle of MVP to be underpinned within the whole school environment. And it complements how, you know, the school improves and also covers some of the PSHE curriculum. Now, the way the school works, I'm not going to go through this into too much detail, but it is around staff members in that school being identified as someone who can lead that programme. It's normally someone in SLT or a pastoral role or PSHE. They then come and get trained themselves, so the staff members from that school will come and be trained in MVP, so they know how it works. And then we, as the youth workers, the MVP workers, go into our schools and start delivering the mentor training. And then after that, the mentors then deliver 5 sessions to our mentees, and they participate in LJMU evaluations as well to make sure that the programme is working. Besides from that, I've obviously talked a little bit about how the workforce gets on board to ensure there is a whole school approach to this project, but we also know that parents and carers do want to know what's going on as well. So we provide lots of information to whole schools. I was speaking earlier on, I was saying, you know, I'm a little bit nervous to do this today, but I actually delivered in front of North Liverpool Academy's whole staff team, which was about 300 staff. I was not expecting it. I turned up and it was basically a room this size, and I was like, given a microphone, just hope for the best. But it was great to see that the whole workforce was on board with MVP, which helps MVP be embedded within that school. And then also we obviously provide parents and carers with a lot of information, because when we are doing MVP and we explore some of those attitudes and beliefs that young people have about violence, a lot of the time it's coming from their parents and carers. So although we're not aiming to change parents and carers' attitudes and beliefs, we're acknowledging that they're still part of the process. Now, obviously, our MVP programme links into key documents and key legislation, including the Violence Against Women and Girls agenda within Liverpool, and it is also underpinned by that serious violence duty around promoting active bystanders within our city region and Merseyside wider. So a little bit about our reach, a little bit of promotion of how far we've come and the work that we have been doing. So we gained commission to do MVP in 2020, so when the Violence Reduction Partnership had probably just about started, and it was just to deliver to 10 schools, have a little go and see how it went. And that's grown every year to now the fact that we cover 1/3 of schools within Merseyside. And although we target secondary schools, we've also worked with special schools, and we've also had elements of secondary school support and primary schools as well. And so far, these numbers are actually a little bit higher now just because this data was from 2024, but we've covered 36 schools within Merseyside where 1,153 mentors have been trained, and they've gone on to deliver to 10,000 mentees. And that number has grown because we are still continuing to do that programme this year. But in terms of the key things of what are we getting from MVP, and we're going to go back to our mentors and think about what the impact MVP has had on them as young people. So hopefully it works.
As a mentor, I've gained various skills such as being able to present myself, increase my self-confidence.
Confidence to talk like in front of a group, and also probably friends.
A gain of knowledge in a way, because I wasn't really that, like obviously I knew about online bullying and that, but I learned it in a better perspective when we were doing the training for it.
I've learned some things about topics and situations. I've also learned how to work with younger students.
I've also learned to sort of have confidence in myself so that I can like speak in front of people. So I used to be quite scared of speaking in front of people.
I've gained definitely confidence in speaking to like groups of people and public speaking as well. But I also think it's helped me learn myself how to handle situations like that, like situations where somebody may be being violent or I was worried about someone else. It's really helped me learn how to handle these situations and learn how to be better in the future.
It's given me a lot more confidence to do more public speaking or just speaking in front of people in general.
I've definitely gained a lot of confidence in speaking to people in like audience settings and just presentations in general.
Amazing. So fabulous things around confidence, but we know as well the other impact of that is how it teaches you about violence prevention. So this is a really key quote, and I am going to read it because it's great. So MVP teaches you life skills on mental health and violence. It enlightens you on the effects that cause and prevent violence. For example, gender lenses, victim blaming, bystanding, abuse, violence and leadership. MVP stands for Mentors in Violence Prevention, and we have learned how to show these skills during our learning. Overall, we are confident in showing people what leads up to violent actions and what changes we can make to stop them. We are mentors in violence prevention. So not only do we have the key voices of our mentors who are the underpinning of our programme, we've also had some fantastic feedback from schools about how the project is run. So I'm going to show you another video from our head teachers within some of our schools.
Straight away, I thought it was an interesting model, the way that they were going about mentoring, the openness of conversations that they were having, and that real impact around actually doing something about problems as opposed to just talking about it was quite an attractive model from our perspective.
A quite radical solution based on the research that I'd read from around the world. It certainly seemed to key into the issues of personal development and leadership, essentially. Incredibly powerful force, which I don't think as a system we've always tapped into. We've done it on a surface level perhaps, but this is genuine transfer of issue, delivery, content and process, and that's a little bit scary. But there's some quite scary things out there that we need to tackle.
For me, I think this is really invaluable because it's very different. It is actually giving the students the skills, giving the students the time, and really saying that you are valuable, and the answer in solving this problem isn't necessarily going to come from us as the adults. You are part of the solution to the challenges that we've got going forward.
It's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle. Instead of fighting it, you need to solve it.
Amazing. And then again, just another little thing around our head teacher voice. So one of our schools had an Ofsted inspection. Usually what happens with an Ofsted inspection when we're doing MVP is they go, drop everything, you can't do MVP. This school took on a little bit of a different stance and was like, this is our PSHE curriculum. It's a fantastic programme and we're not shying away from it. And they had an Ofsted inspection, a fake one before they would do the real one. And they went into the PSHE lessons where the mentors were delivering that programme, and they were blown away at how confident the mentors were and the programme overall, which is fantastic. And then just to cover some of the LJMU evaluation, so I know there's some documents on people's tables where you can scan QR codes and go and read the full document, but just an overview so you don't have to read through pages of that if you didn't want to. It's being published in the BMC journal, which is amazing, but we know that there's been an improvement in our bystander behaviour, attitudes towards violence perpetration, development of leadership skills, as well as those positive peer relationships within our schools. And then just to finalise in thinking about our curriculum, so in terms of what MVP covers, it's just thinking about gender stereotypes, the bystander, leadership, recognising violence and challenging victim blaming. But on top of that, they are also able to cover other topics around weapons, hate crime and relationships. Now, I'm just going to do a bit of promotion if you did want to go and have a look further into MVP. We have a fabulous website, which is educationmvp.co.uk, where you can go and click on all of the different tabs to find out a little bit more about the project. But the main thing we always promote is on the fabulous tab, which is called benefits. If you hover over it, there'll be a link to a filming page. The filming page is where all of our MVP mentors in past schools have been given the opportunity to create films about what they've learned in MVP. And there is a plethora of films, there's absolutely loads of them. And year on year, we continue to create them. I've just been speaking to Roger then about a fantastic film that Christ the King in Sefton made this year about the Southport incident and how the community came together to be active bystanders. And it cried my eyes out when I watched it. So that is on there if you do want to go and have a look. But they're all about the MVP topics. And then just to finalise, Roger's already mentioned, but we have been working our socks off to try and get a little bit more funding in terms of the YEF funding, which is the Youth Endowment Fund, which hopefully we'll be taking part in, and it'll be a randomised control trial which will cover a further 30 schools, not only just in Merseyside but starting to go a little bit wider into Cheshire. And the delivery will be in 41 schools, while another 41 schools won't get the delivery but will take part in the SDQs and pro-social questionnaires, which will hopefully let us know whether the project is continuing to work, which hopefully it is. And we know it's working by the conversations we had and how still continue to have when we deliver MVP. So I'm actually great for timing, which is amazing. I haven't put my email address on there because I completely forgot to do that before I sent it out. But if anyone does need me, I am sat on the second table over there, so you're more than welcome to come and chat if you do need to. But thank you so much.
Stay there for a moment, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, similarly, I mean, it's all about development. We keep thinking, along with John Moores, about the evaluation and how we move it forward. An incredible journey for mentors. We were always aware of that and put a lot of time into that. Incredible to see leadership in young people that weren't necessarily thought of as leaders before the start of the programme. But what we've learnt is that we now are choosing to focus on the mentee journey now. So we've done quite a bit on mentors, as you can see through the films. It's about doing even more for our mentees, which of course is our main role in any case, in getting that message across to all our young people. We've got time again for another question. That's all right. Oh.
Thanks, Roger. Jill Summers from Liverpool City Council. Just a question around, do any of the mentees become mentors? I don't know if you've been doing it long enough.
Yes,
around that
so
journey.
I was in a school yesterday, so I was in Belvedere Academy the past 2 days, and when I went in to do the assembly to say, oh, does anyone want to be a mentor? This is the programme. One of the young people put their hands up and she was like, I was a mentee in year 7, so 3 years prior. And it was so nice because then when you do the training, they're like, oh, I remember this part. And then one of them said to me yesterday, the only thing I remember from MVP was the mentors brought Haribo. And I was like, great, thanks. I'm so glad you took something away from it. But yeah, we're now at that stage where if it's been going in one of those original schools that started, we are starting to see where the mentees are becoming the mentors, and they are taking on that role because they remember it from being younger, which is great. But yeah, some schools are still brand new and only just starting out, but we are getting a couple of them where it's a journey.
Haribos, we're not in the evaluation.
No, they weren't in the evaluation.
Okay. Listen, another round of applause, please.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Rianne. Thank you very much. Okay, hand you over to Ree.
Hi, good morning. As Roger's just said, my name's Marie Morgan and I'm embedded into, I am obviously fire service staff, but I am embedded into the VRP and have been there for 4 years now. And today we're going to speak about, we've got a couple of our staff from the Fire Champions programme, but I'd just like to say with the fire service have two targeted programmes throughout Merseyside, which is one is the Beacon programme that is funded by VRP, and the second is the Fire Champions programme, both targeted interventions. So Jack and Lucy are going to give you a little bit of information about it now. Thanks, Jack and Lucy.
Hello everyone, as Marie's just said, my name's Jack and this is Lucy and we're both from Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. We have been fortunate enough to be part of the Fire Champions team from the very start. We've both got backgrounds in coaching, which is why we're interested in the programme. In the presentation, we're just going to take you through how the Fire Champions started, the key messages that we deliver and the impact that we feel that we're having on the schools that we deliver the Champions programme to.
Okay, can you hear me? Hiya, yeah, I'm Lucy. Like Jack said, we're both previous coaches, so when we got asked about this was like sort of the dream. We come into one workplace, but we also get to do another little bit of our previous work. So our team is made up of 3 partners, the police, the ambulance and obviously the fire service. From the fire service, we've got people who work in all aspects of our job. So we've got a couple of girls who come from control. We've got people who are Green Book as well as Grey Book, which means they work in the offices in prevention and safety, things like that. We have got various people from our friends in the police. They work not only in normal policing roles, but they are also part of the youth campaigns and so on. And we've also got friends and partners in NWAS and SJA who work with us as well. We deliver 6-week programmes in schools, and the idea of this is giving education via exercise. So sitting in classrooms and things is all good and well, but we come at it from a slightly different approach. We come up with 3 deliverable messages that we deliver each session, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a second. But what I really want to talk about here is where we've come from. So back in 2008, the Firefighter Games took part in Liverpool. That was a big spectator sport, really. And through that, we were able to get into more schools and more partnerships as part of the fire service. This was supported by funding that was going into a lot of grassroots school stuff, a lot of sort of localised sports funding, and it more so towards actually keeping PE and physical activity as part of schools. As a lot of you will know, that often gets put on the back burner when it comes to education. It's something that often gets put aside for the more, in quotation marks, important things. So through that, we got FireFit. FireFit was us going into schools and doing the physical exercise with a little bit of, you know, what's going on in your community, talking about our role as fire service members. And then through this, we sort of developed Fire Champions. This me as well. Okay, so when I talk about the physical aspect, the idea of that is not only to keep kids active and then teach them things from our perspective, but it's also to have an overall effect on various other services. So, for example, the things that we want to dampen down are the attitudes that violence is okay and it's part of our community. That then, you know, reduces the antisocial behaviours that we see across our community, across all of our services. So especially the three that we mentioned, the police, the fire service, and also the paramedics, they get an awful lot of violence towards them, as you can see by these figures. On top of that, the idea behind having a physical approach was to make sure that we are reducing the impact on our NHS, encouraging younger people at a younger age to see that sport, physical activity, looking after yourself, you know, good nutrition, not smoking, not getting involved in things that we might, you know, succumb to during peer pressure. This all has a long-lasting effect, which is, you know, stopping the effect that it has on the NHS. As we all know, it's struggling.
So the programme itself is a 6-week programme, and we deliver a 90-minute session each week. Each session is made up of one topic and it's split into 3 key messages. So since starting in June 2023, we've delivered to over 500 children across more than 15 schools. Now, we're currently running a programme in 4 schools on this current 6-week block. The idea of the programme is to increase children's self-confidence and self-esteem. We want to improve their aspiration levels and we want to reduce levels of absence, which is working because we get told time and time again by teachers and students how excited they are to come back next week and do the next session. The kids tend to love the sessions each week. We deliver key messages that have been identified by the VRP, which are high risk factors for children in the areas that we're going out and visiting. The children often tell us how excited they are to come back. As well as that, the main aim is to build relationships between the emergency services and the children themselves. The children's ideas around emergency services are often preconceived from the parents' ideas themselves. So changing them outlooks is really important. So the key messages that the fire service deliver is we deliver fire safety, road safety and water safety. We can tailor these messages depending on the time of the year. So when it comes to fire safety, we often do specific sessions around bonfire night, fireworks around New Year's Eve as well. Halloween's a big one with the costumes that the kids use are often very flammable. Schools then choose between road safety or water safety. They might alternate between some of the other messages we deliver. Call 999 is such a simple message, but it's one that we have to deliver because when you ask the kids, they still say, in an emergency, we'll call 911 because of all the American programs that they watch. Yeah.
Okay, so as a fire service, we deliver fire stuff and we're here presenting on behalf of all of our partners. So this is sort of the police-led messages. What we've realised is actually the fire service messages are really important because it's essentially life-saving advice. But some of the other things that we're seeing now that perhaps weren't really issues when Jack and myself were at school, we're having to change with that and actually educate young people in a way that we never thought we might have to. So these are 4 of the topics that we actually cover, and the way we get to this is we go and visit the schools before the 6-week programme, and we sit down with the head or whoever's leading and we say, listen, what are the problems in your school? Tell us. We'll come up with games, we'll come up with messages, we'll come up with the antidote to the poison that you found, essentially. So these are the 4 topics that we deliver a lot, and these are the themes that the schools give us. But some of the other ones that we've had have been quite interesting. We've asked, you know, what is a problem in your school? And we went to one school and they said, actually, I know it's not on your list, but how do you feel about talking about sexual language? How do I feel about talking about sexual language with 9 and 10-year-olds? Not great. But you know, that's what we're being asked to do, and that is what we're doing, because similar to what some of the other speakers have said, there's no point in giving them a list to choose from if what they need isn't on that list. So we go through a lot of this as well. And I just wanted to say about this particular topic, hats off to the police, because this is a lot of this is led by them. But these are difficult topics. I know we've got a lot of people here who do this work day in, day out. It really is hard trying to explain to young people what's actually out there and what might affect them, what they've got to be resilient to. Having to get them to recognise it is actually really difficult. But we are doing it, and it is paying off.
So the casualty care session is delivered by St John's Ambulance and MWAS, and this is one of the more popular sessions among the children. It's really important because it gives the children the confidence to go out and put these skills into practice if they ever come into a situation where they may need them. I went to a school in Ernest Cookson in West Derby, and it's a school for children with social, emotional and mental health difficulties. And if you didn't get these children engaged, it just descended into chaos quickly. You needed to keep them active and you needed to keep them engaged. Steve, one of the paramedics that we work with, he came into this session and I wasn't sure how it was going to work because it's not one of the more active sessions. But all of the kids hung on every word and they loved it. They loved doing the bandages, they loved doing CPR on the dummies as well. And it really is one of the more popular sessions amongst all of the schools that we visit. I don't know whether the video is going to work if it's not playing. I think you've got to press play on the video, so...
Where do we press the play here?
I don't think we can.
Okay.
Oh!
What is one takeaway message that we can all remember from Fire Champions?
Too quiet.
Oh. Okay. If it's too quiet, I'll talk anyway and tell you basically what they said. So a lot of the stuff that we are doing, we are quite a small project and we haven't been running for that long. So we've had to find a way to do basically what JMU are doing and evaluating. So we've been doing that ourselves. So I went into the school and I asked them a year later, this was one of our first schools that we visited, and I asked them the sort of things that they remembered and the sort of things that they enjoyed most, the sort of things that they got from the sessions. One of the things that we touched on before, and Jack's just said it, is the confidence. The confidence to go, actually, no, I do know how to do that. I have recognised that that person needs help and I can do something about it. And the other things that they said were, we enjoyed being active. We know that we can speak differently to you than when we're with our teachers. And a lot of our sessions are actually based around what Jack said earlier, making that connection between us, the emergency services, and the children. If they know that now at the age of 9 and 10, it doesn't matter when they're in the 20s, they will still remember being able to speak to us in the classroom, being able to speak to us on the yard. Yeah?
Okay.
Oh. How am I doing this?
Okay.
There we go.
So, what impact are we having on the schools that we're visiting? We're going out and we're creating them relationships between the emergency services and the children. As I said, we want that to translate over into family members as well. So we want to have a relationship with the families. So at the end of the 6-week programme, the children come in and they're presented with certificates and some gifts from the Fire Champions, and we do a presentation, and family members and parents and guardians are encouraged to come in and to watch what their children were up to over the last 6 weeks. It's really important as well because it gives us, the emergency services, a chance to have a one-to-one conversation with families and answer any questions that they might have. As well as building relationships, we're also giving the children confidence, like we just said. We want them to be able to apply these skills that they're learning in real life situations, which potentially could save somebody's life. Each element that we deliver has a practical side to it, so the children are ready to put it into practice. Or we also want to give them the confidence to go and spread the message to family members. So we want them to go and share the messages that we are teaching them. As well as that, we use a trauma-informed approach. So more recently, all of the coaches have took part in trauma-informed training, which we then implement into the sessions that we use. This training that we took part in really highlights the importance of early intervention with children and the benefits that it'll have for them later on in life. So as you can see from the comments from children and teachers, it's a really popular programme, and we get asked numerous times to go back to schools and visit. And we know it is working because I was on the truck with Kensington, and we visited a community centre, and one of the girls who'd been on the programme in a school in Anfield recognised me, and she came over with all of her friends, which is really good, and it just shows that we are building them relationships. We want the children to have confidence to approach emergency services and be able to speak to us just like human beings.
Got some pictures here, obviously, about this is the sort of activities that we're doing. There's the one in the middle is actually the one that I want to talk about. Obviously, you can see that we invite the children to sit on the fire engine and see what we do. We do the same with the police car, but there's a couple of things that we've sort of built over our time doing this, and one of the things that we really want to hit home with the families and the children are that we do what we say we're going to do, and that hasn't been something that we've necessarily gone about setting on purpose, but as we've sort of gained momentum in the schools, having that and building that bond of trust where the kids go, no, the firefighters did say that they'd bring the fire engine down, and that we could see and we could, you know, get to know them. The police service, they did take us in the car, and at the end of the 6 weeks, we did say that we wanted to race them across the yard. That's some of our senior management, racing children across the yard. But it's really important, and I think a lot of the things that we're hearing today is, you know, we want our young people to have a voice. I always say this, and Georgie loves this phrase, I always say, our greatest tomorrow has to be done today. And that's our children of today. We need to work on them now. We don't need to get there when it's happened. We need to get there before. One more thing, because I know I'm racing for time here, but we basically... There's a number of other things that we do in the fire service that probably don't get highlighted. One of them that I really want to speak about is about race. There's a great fellow we work with, his name's Tim, he's Fijian, and he runs a project within our workforce where he comes and he speaks to us about having the conversation about race. Obviously this ties into one of our topics towards hate crime. We are a very diverse city and we need children to understand that. Now that's not necessarily one of our topics, but it's something that we see every day and we need to, you know, make movement in. We went to a school where we had a little girl and she said, I don't really want to join in because I don't feel like I'm part of this community. My skin is a different colour to everyone else's here. I'm the only one. This has got nothing to do with me. So what did we do? We invited Tim down, and Tim came and he spoke to her and he said, look, you've just got as much place in the world as anybody else. You are part of this. And it was so unexpected for us, really, wasn't it? Because we're used to talking about smoke alarms. We used to tell them not to go into the water. But this was a very niche subject that we actually were able to work on, and we were only able to work on that by having the people that we work with and being able to get to those young people and making them feel like they can tell us the problems for us to solve them. Is that the last one?
Just questions. Well,
yeah,
questions. Thank you, Jack and Lucy, for that. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and as they said, it is an amazing programme, and I don't think we mentioned it's targeted at years 6 and 7, 5 and 6, so their ages 9 and 10, making that transition into the secondary schools. So yeah, fantastic. So has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Yes, Emily.
I mean, I actually came to see one of the programmes that you did, and it was brilliant to see just the kind of physical exercise and the tent and things, but then how you kind of subtly weaved in some of those questions, and it was really good to see how engaged the kids were. It was just to come back to your point around the sexual violence bit, and I suppose and a little bit around the race issue, where you've obviously brought individuals in, and you were saying how actually sexual violence, or the words that young people are using around sex and things, sexual language. Yeah. So given that it was an area that you said you probably weren't that confident in, how did you pull in additional resources? How do you kind of tackle some of these issues where maybe it's something that you're maybe less confident at or maybe have less experience at?
You can answer it, or I can answer it. It's up to you.
We did, a school got in touch with me as well over it that we were delivering in, and we got in touch then with the school, and then we involved the Ariel Trust. So we know there's different resources out there and different partnerships that we work with that we can involve. But you can...
Yeah, I hate the microphone. So me and Jack actually spend a lot of our time making up the games, which I know sounds mad, we make up games, but we do, and we have to weave, like you said, those messages into games. So that was really difficult, but what I did, I actually went to my friends who work in other big organisations who run a lot of grassroots things. So one of the things I did was, I went to Prevention, who actually go out into the community and visit. I went upstairs to Prevention and they gave me a lot of advice. And then I went to my friend who actually works in Liverpool Football Club, and she spoke about the things that her grassroots teams actually experience, and I went from there. So whilst it's very good to come up with your own ideas, sometimes someone's already got it covered. So we are able to reach out and speak to our other partners who can help us along with that. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. Katharina Quinn from the Anthony Walker Foundation, and I have to say it was, I have been waiting for someone to talk about, the issue of race in our schools. It is certainly, a growing concern. It's not gone away. It is getting worse in our schools. So it was kind of really knowing that obviously the likes of our foundation are here, to help your organisations in those particular areas. And in regards to activity and physical activity, I know with yourself, your organisation, I think would just be fantastic, with the children. I don't know if you've worked together, but I think it's to have that physicality, that movement, history. I think it's something that would be really valuable to the kids in the schools. That was a nice link. It's just linking the two, about education on racism and how you talk about it in a less uncomfortable way for our kids, but obviously also bringing in the joy element, the strength. It's really important to do that.
I'd like to say, in particular, the school we were talking about, I got in touch with you.
Yeah.
Actually went back into the school.
Right, yeah.
Do well. Thank you, Katrina.
Yeah, I have to say, have you had the session from Tim?
No,
I have, and I'm friends with Tim anyway, and Tim actually makes you walk in his shoes, and I've never met anyone who could do that before. I'm a white woman. I will never understand those things that he faces, and he did it in such a way that I felt I was able to go and break it down for children. Children are wonderful. They're so malleable, which can be a good and a bad thing, but they do not see a lot of the time the bad connotations, the negative connotations. So when they say someone's skin is different, a lot of the time they don't mean it, and it's getting there first that actually makes the biggest impact. When it comes to the physicality side, we know that a lot of the, in quotation marks, problem children, the children who are faced with these ACEs and things, that is such a good way for them to release, and that's why we're really, we believe that building on that and giving them something that's not sat in a classroom that they have to do a lot of the days a week, or, it's not relying on mum and dad to bring us to it. That's why we think that this is really working. Plus our team, I have to say, we're not in this either. We were going to wear it today, but usually we've got our own sports uniforms, so the kids feel like we're one of them as well.
Okay, I'll leave you to round it up then, Roger.
No, I wasn't going to do that. Listen, thank you very much. A round of applause, please. Thank you. So Marie and I are around all day as well, so any questions that you'd want to ask us from the Violence Reduction Partnership perspective of what we're providing for education, because now we know there are a further 12 months, then there's potential for continuation funding for some of the projects that you've been seeing. But there might be also other nuanced elements of this that you feel we would be best to focus on for our remaining 12 months or the next 12 months. So by all means, make contact with us through the day if you do have any queries or suggestions.